Hey everybody! So today we're going to keep talking about dispositions. Specifically, we're going to talk about the final dispositor or dispositors. You can have one, you can have a few, or you can have none. Some people have none. So this is a planet that is incredibly important in your chart because all of the other planets will bend there, will bend to that planet. All of the other planets in the chart will bend to that planet. What you want to do for something like this, or what I recommend doing to find your final dispositor, is to create something that looks kind of like this, a dispositor tree by planetary rulership. And essentially you write out where each planet falls, and then you take like an arrow and you write where its planet, where that sign's planetary ruler falls, and then continue on like that. And it'll kind of tell you what planet all the other planets bend. Now, some people don't like to use, some people don't like to use the modern rulership for this. If you want to use traditional rulership, that's fine. I did use modern here, but you can obviously use both, or one or the other. Actually, using both is really kind of cool. Because I don't know, just adds more depth. So it gives you an idea of what, people will ask on forums, what's my most powerful planet? What's my most dominant planet? Those sorts of things. I don't know if necessarily the final dispositor or dispositors, because you could have a couple. I don't know if they're necessarily the most most dominant, but they are the most powerful. They usually are very powerful. I hate to say the most of anything. I kind of had to check myself there. But they do tend to be very powerful. So a final dispositor will be in the sign, will be a planet in the sign that it's domicile or at home in. So you'd be talking about, like, I don't know, Venus in Taurus or Venus in Libra could be a final dispositor. Mercury in Gemini could be a final dispositor. Uranus in Aquarius could be a final dispositor. Yeah, it just depends on what sort of rulership you want to use. So there's this. You should go through your chart and see kind of if you have a final dispositor. Do you have one? Do you have multiple ones? Sometimes people have more than one. If you have more than one, there usually is one that is more important, more powerful than the other. It really just, you'd have to take a lot of factors into consideration. Like, I don't know, if you've got two and one makes a lot of very challenging aspects and one makes a lot of very easy aspects, I don't know, maybe the one with the easier aspects has more power just because it doesn't have tension and a sort of yo-yoing from like the opposition or the square aspects. Perhaps it has more power to just kind of fluidly flow through. If it makes a final dispositor, if one of them makes a bunch of, trines and sextiles, it might make that one slightly, or the power is like easier to, it flows easier maybe. You don't feel like you're hitting your head up against a wall quite so much. So yeah, if you have a couple of them, if you find that you have a couple, I would definitely look at the aspects that it makes to try to figure out which one's more powerful. If one of them happens to be retrograde, I would probably say the one that's direct might have a little bit more power to it. I hate saying that because I love retrograde planets, but the one that's direct probably is a little bit more powerful, because rather than, you know, introverting the energy, you're able to easily send it outward. So I would definitely look at that. Oh, I would also, if you've got a couple of them, if you've got a couple final dispositors, look and see what aspects they make with one another. Like, let's say you've got I don't know, let's say you've got the moon in Cancer and you have Venus in Taurus, and they're sextile one another. I would still look to see which one of those planets seems to be more powerful than the other, tends to have a little bit of a leg up on the other. But looking at if they have an aspect between them, you can kind of see, are they able to share that power easily in a comfortable way, like with the sextile? Or I don't know, let's say you had Venus in Libra and the moon in Cancer. That might be a square, depending on the orbs of, you know, depending on the degrees of the planets. That might be a square. That could show some tension between those two, which obviously might not be as easy for the person. There might be kind of a real battle between the two planets for domination, if you will. The midpoint would be very important in a case like this. The midpoint between the two planets, as a way to filter that tension constructively. So definitely look at that. Definitely look to see what's going on in your chart in that regard. Now, I also want to mention, and this, okay, so I've got, there, okay, so the more I talk, you might see that I have things I like to call Eliisms. There are fake terms that I fucking make up because I don't know what the real term is. I know what I'm talking about, but I don't know what the real term is. To be quite honest, I don't even know if this has a fucking term. But it's important, okay? So you want to figure out what the final dispositors or dispositor or whatever of the chart as a whole is, right? But let me say this. When you do these chains of dispositions, right, the one that comes off of the ascendant is really important. I find that one's really important. This may or may not be your final only dispositor. If you've got multiple ones, this may not, you know. This isn't, okay, so like, I'll show you my chart. Okay, so in my chart, from the ascendant in Sagittarius, you would then go to Jupiter in the 4th. From Jupiter in the 4th in Aries, you would then go to Mars. Mars is in Scorpio in the 11th. If you used traditional rulership, you would end there, because Mars is at home in Scorpio by traditional rulership. Because I do mess with both. Then you can go on to Pluto, which is also in Scorpio in the 11th. That is the final dispositor off the ascended chain. It's actually my final dispositor just in general, but it's the final dispositor off of the ascended chain. Now, this may not be the world's greatest example, because not everybody's will have the final dispositor being off the ascendant chain, or they might have multiple ones, so not everybody's will be as easy as that, if that makes sense. But definitely pay attention. Like, if you've got multiple ones, if you've got multiple final dispositors, definitely pay attention to the one off of the ascendant chain. This one, I find when I read for people, it's very, very, very important if they have multiple ones. I honestly might even say that this one might take prominence for me as a reader. I would really pay attention to it and the aspects that it makes and the way that it functions. Because everything from the ascendant, right, is going to bend to that planet. Now, you might have other ones in your chart, other final dispositors in your chart, but that one, your temperament, your attitude towards the world, everything like that will bend to that ascendant chain final dispositor. Again, I don't know what the fuck the real name for it is. I don't know. That term works for me. So, but yeah, I would definitely do these exercises to try to figure out what yours are, especially in terms of power in a chart. What's powerful in a chart? And then there are things called mutual receptions that you might find that you have in your chart. Now, this chart example actually is Natalie's. 'Cause she has one. Okay, see how she has Venus in Capricorn, and she has Saturn in Libra. Okay. Saturn traditionally rules Capricorn, and in modern it rules Capricorn. And Venus, in traditional and modern, rules Libra. So they're in one another's, they're kind of, yeah, they're just kind of switched. And you'll notice that if you try to do like a chain, a disposition chain, it'll bounce back and forth. You'll want to look and see, oh, is this a mutual reception? Now, if it is, like in this case, holy shit, sorry. Fucking shit's like going crazy. I don't know what's wrong with it. I can't get it to like not fly over here in my face. So if you notice that happens, that back and forth like that, check to see if it's a mutual reception that you have going on. Now with mutual receptions, I find that it really depends on the aspects that they make with one another, with the planets make with one another, as to how they function. They can either really egg one another on in all the good ways, or they can egg one another on in challenging ways. It really depends on, like, okay, if you've got the planets in mutual reception, if they're, say, trine, in a trine aspect, that might show that these planets, they egg one another on in positive ways. If you have them square one another, that could show that they might not egg one another on in the greatest ways all the time. Or I've also seen it said, like, if they have a good aspect with one another, if they're in a good aspect, it strengthens it. If they're in a bad aspect, it weakens it. I don't know if I'd really think about it as good or bad, or strengthen or weaken, but more like easy and challenging. So yeah, definitely take note if you have those as well. They're common. But yeah, so I think I'm going to stop here. Because this one was longer than I meant it to be. So yeah, if you are watching this on YouTube, follow us on Instagram at Let's Fuck With Astrology. I am at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Avaturno Astrology on Instagram. If you're watching this on Instagram, you can find us on YouTube, searching for Let's Fuck With Astrology in the YouTube search bar. If you do the Reddit thing, you can find us on the subreddit r/Let's Fuck With Astrology. And if you're interested in the star cards, you can go to letsfuckwithastrology.com/star cards. Okay, everybody. I'll see y'all later.